The air was filled with excitement as the rehearsal dinner for my daughter Emma's wedding started. I was so proud watching her stand next to her fiancé Jason, enjoying the good wishes from everyone. I had no idea that the happy mood would soon be ruined by someone I had tried so hard to accept as my own. "May I have everyone's attention, please?" Emma suddenly called out, making the room go quiet. My husband Walter and I looked at each other, confused, as she held up her glass. "I need to talk about something important," she announced, staring coldly at me. "Helen, you call yourself my stepmom, but really you're just an unwelcome stranger in our lives." The room filled with gasps as Walter turned pale. It felt like a punch in the stomach, her harsh words knocking the breath out of me. "Emma, what do you mean by this?" Walter asked, his voice shaking. "Don't be shocked, Dad," she snapped. "You know she's been trying to push her way into our family from the start. I'm done acting like she's my mom. She's not, and she never will be." Her mean words cut through me. I looked for any sign of the kind girl I knew in her face, but saw only dislike and anger. "Emma, please, not here," I begged, my voice breaking. "Why not?" she retorted. "It's my day, and I'll say what I want." Walter clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. "Enough," he said firmly. "We're leaving." Emma just shrugged, smirking as she turned away from us. We had to walk out past all the shocked guests, their stares and whispers making me feel judged as we left. I must have done something to make my stepdaughter hate me so much. The tears I had been holding back finally fell, and I knew then that thing would never be the same. In the car, Walter was very tense, gripping the steering wheel tightly, his face showing both anger and pain. "I don't know what's gotten into her, Helen," he said, his voice tight. "But I promise I won't let her treat you this way." I just nodded, too upset to talk, as we drove away from what was supposed to be a happy event. I kept wondering what had changed the sweet, loving girl I knew, and what difficult times might be ahead for us after her hurtful outburst. Maybe Emma began to dislike me when I married her father and became her stepmother, or perhaps it started even before that, influenced by her mother, Julie. Julie had once told her, as she gently touched her hair, "No one can ever replace your real mother." Those words had left a bad feeling, but I tried to ignore it, hoping to create a warm relationship with Emma. "I'm not trying to replace anyone," I had assured her softly. "I just want us to be friends." She nodded, but her empty look showed no warmth. It was like there was already a wall between us, built stronger by her mother's mean comments. At first, Emma was polite, though a bit cold. But as time went on, her true feelings started to show. "Why are you always trying to butt into my life?" she snapped one day when I just asked about her weekend plans. Walter gave her a stern look. "Emma, don't talk to your mother like that." "She's not my mother," Emma yelled back, anger twisting her face. She left the room quickly, leaving me stunned by her harsh words. Walter just shook his head, looking disappointed and resigned. From then on, Emma made it clear she didn't like me. She would roll her eyes when I came into a room and make mean comments quietly. If I tried to help or ask something, she would snap back as if she couldn't stand me being around. "You're not fooling anyone with your fake concern," she sneered one day. Her dislike for me was obvious, and it hurt. I asked if she needed a ride to her friend's house. "Emma, that's enough," Walter warned, losing his patience, but she didn't listen. It became clear that her mom, Julie, was fueling Emma's growing dislike for me. Whenever we met, Julie's fake smile hardly hid her joy in seeing our troubled relationship. "I don't know what you've done to make my daughter dislike you," she would say with a sly grin, "but you'll just have to deal with the consequences." And deal with them I did. Emma's hostility grew like an untreated wound, hurting our family life more every day. I had no idea her coldness was just the start of even worse behavior that seemed impossible to stop. After she quit college, with no clear goals, she became even meaner, using her complaints to try to get money from us. "Give me $10,000, or I'll tell everyone how awful you are as a stepmom," she threatened one day in the kitchen. I was shocked. Emma, why are you saying this? I've always tried to be nice to you. Save it, she snapped. Just give me the money, and I'll leave you alone for a bit. I felt desperate. I don't have that kind of money, I told her. Her eyes narrowed. Then find it, unless you want everyone to know your secrets. From then on, it was a constant pattern. Emma demanded more and more money, and her threats got worse if I said no. Walter was stuck in the middle, trying to please both of us while figuring out why his daughter had changed so much. Please, just give her what she wants, he pleaded one night after yet another big fight. I can't take all this fighting, but I knew that giving in would only make her more demanding, so I stood firm, even as Emma became more cunning. You think you're so great with your job at the school, she mocked. Just wait until everyone knows the truth about you. Her veiled threat really scared me. I could only imagine the kind of hurtful lies she could tell, which would affect my colleagues and the students I was committed to helping. Through all of this, Julie was always there, her mean smile supporting her daughter's terrible actions. You reap what you sow, Helen, she sneered during one of her frequent unwanted visits. Maybe if you were a better stepmom, Emma wouldn't be like this. Her words hurt deeply, stirring up a storm of emotions inside me: anger, pain, and betrayal. But even as I felt overwhelmed, a small spark of determination started to grow in me. I couldn't just let things happen to me anymore. If Emma wanted a fight, then I was ready to stand up to her and show everyone the kind of person she really was. And if Julie thought she could keep causing trouble from behind the scenes, she was mistaken. It was time to stop being nice. From then on, I was determined to do whatever it took to protect my family, even if it meant taking drastic steps I never thought I would. As Emma's wedding day got closer, her demands and disrespect became worse. It seemed like she enjoyed making my life difficult, pushing me to my limits. One evening, she walked right into the living room and said, I need another $8,000 for my dress alterations, without even saying hello. Walter gave me a look, hoping I would give in, but I had enough. No, Emma, enough is enough. She looked surprised and said mockingly, Oh, and what are you going to do about it, Helen? Go cry to Daddy like you always do. My fists clenched at my sides, anger rushing through me. You ungrateful child, everything your father and I have done, we did for you, and this is how you repay us. Emma laughed loudly, the sound as annoying as nails on a chalkboard. Oh please, don't act so righteous. We both know you're just a pathetic, insecure woman trying to buy your way into our family. That hurt more than I wanted to admit, but before I could reply, she hit me with another harsh comment. Do you think the school wants a washed-up loser like you around their students? Wait until they hear about your little drinking problem. My heart sank as I realized how low she was willing to go. She planned to ruin my career and reputation with her lies. Emma, that's enough, Walter shouted, his face red with anger, but she just smirked, enjoying the chaos she had created. At that moment, something in me changed. I felt a strong resolve build up, making me firm against the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I was done being her victim. Get out, I said firmly, my voice calm but intense. And don't come back until you can behave like a decent person. Emma looked surprised at my strong reaction, but then sneered and came closer, her breath warm on my face. You'll regret this, Helen. I promise you that. With those final words, she stormed out, leaving a heavy silence behind her. Walter watched her leave, his face showing both shock and sadness. I'm sorry, Helen. I don't know what's gotten into her, he said tiredly. But I understood now, this wasn't a sudden change. It was the result of long-held bitterness and manipulation, driven by Julie's harmful influence. As I thought about Emma's threats, a firm resolve formed within me. She thought she could destroy my life whenever she wanted with her venomous lies. She was very wrong. If it was a fight she wanted, then I was ready to fight back, and this time I wouldn't play by her rules. Her threats kept replaying in my mind, fueling my determination to show everyone her true character before it was too late. I knew I couldn't count on Walter. His love for his daughter blinded him to the person she had become. I had to act on my own to protect myself and our family. That's when Roger came into the picture. He'd dated Emma a few years ago, before her behavior turned so manipulative and selfish. A chance meeting at the grocery store led to a conversation, and soon things started to make sense. Roger helped me see that Emma was not who I thought she was. Sean shared with me, looking very sorry, "She lied about you and Walter. All of it was lies." I felt a chill as he described how Emma had portrayed me as a controlling stepmom trying to push my way into their close family, and how she made Walter out to be a harsh tyrant. I believed everything she said, Sean admitted, embarrassed. She seemed so believable, full of anger. It wasn't until we split up that I started to see the truth. As he talked, a clearer image of Emma's harmful behavior appeared. She had spun a web of lies for years to turn everyone against me, influenced heavily by her mom, Julie, who was like a master at controlling her. From the start, she's been filling Emma's head with twisted thoughts about you trying to take her mom's place, Sean told me, which made me feel sick as everything started to make sense. All this time, I was the target of their mean plan, painted as the bad guy in their story. But Sean had more to say. He explained that Emma's upcoming wedding was just a cold-hearted plan to get more money and status. "She doesn't love Jason," he said dismissively. "She's just using him to get the lifestyle she wants. Once she's done with him, she'll move on to the next guy." Hearing this confirmed my doubts about Emma's shallow feelings, but it was still hard to accept. After talking with Sean, my head was spinning with all he had told me. For too long, I had let Emma and Julie control the story. Now, with the truth on my side, I was ready to confront them, to break apart their fake story, and show everyone what was really going on. No more being the victim, no more being scared of their threats and lies. It was time to fight back. The day of Emma's wedding was sunny, but inside the church, the air was tense. As I watched her get ready, admiring herself in the mirror, a firm resolve grew in me. Today, the truth would come out. Julie, fixing Emma's veil, cooed, "You look beautiful, sweetheart, just like a princess on her special day." Emma smiled, soaking up her mother's compliments. Seeing this, my stomach turned. Yes, it was like a real-life fairy tale, but I knew the truth behind the facade. I couldn't help but make a sarcastic comment, complete with a handsome prince and a wicked stepmother. Julie glared at me, but Emma just laughed, not seeming to care about the meaning behind my words. "Speaking of wicked stepmothers," she said coldly, "I'm surprised you even showed up, Helen, after how you've treated me. I half expected you to boycott the whole thing." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, believe me, I thought about it, but I wouldn't miss this for the world." Before she could say anything else, Walter appeared with a forced smile. "Everything okay in here?" he asked. "Just peachy, Dad," Emma replied sweetly, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Helen and I were just having a little heart-to-heart. Walter looked like he wanted to ignore the tension. "Well, it's almost time. You ready, kiddo?" Emma nodded, suddenly looking excited to walk down the aisle. As the ceremony began and the music played, I took a deep breath, preparing myself. The ceremony went by quickly, with empty vows and fake smiles. But as Jason and Emma were about to kiss, I knew I had to speak up. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet church. Everyone gasped and looked at me. Emma's face twisted in anger, her fists clenched. "What is the meaning of this?" she hissed, her voice shaking with rage. Taking another deep breath, I looked at her firmly. "The meaning, Emma, is that I can't just watch you lie and manipulate everyone anymore." Julie's face went white as she realized what was happening. Before she could say anything, I continued, pulling out strong evidence that Sean had given me. This included texts, emails, and recordings that exposed Emma's deceit. For years, you've lied and turned everyone against me while acting like the victim, I announced confidently. Not anymore. It's time for everyone to know the truth. As I showed everyone the proof of her dishonesty and selfish plans, the room went silent. Emma's composure broke, and her face twisted into an angry snarl. "You liar," she shouted, lunging at me. "How dare you ruin my special day?" But it was too late. The truth was out there for everyone to see. Jason's family looked shocked and disgusted. The crowd's reactions showed that Emma's carefully built facade was collapsing. Standing there, alone and exposed, she seemed like a shadow of the person she used to be. I felt a mix of pity and triumph. The battle was over, and I had won by revealing the harsh truth that had been hidden for too long. The impact of my revelation was like an explosion, breaking apart the illusions we had all lived with. As the quiet turned to noise from the shocked crowd, I prepared myself for the confrontation. "How could you?" Emma yelled, anger written all over her face. "This was supposed to be my perfect day." "Your perfect day was built on lies," I replied calmly, despite the emotional turmoil inside. "Did you really think you could keep deceiving everyone forever?" She tried to answer, but stopped when Jason stepped forward, his face full of disbelief and heartbreak. "Is it true?" he asked desperately, hoping she would deny everything. "Were you just using me this whole time?" For a moment, I almost felt bad for her. Then she smirked, her cold, calculating gaze returning. "Of course not, baby," she said, reaching out to touch his cheek. "You know how much I love you. Helen is just trying to cause trouble like she always does." Emma's words made me clench my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I wanted to wipe that fake look of innocence off her face. Didn't she realize it was all over? Apparently not, as she turned her angry look back to me. "This is all your fault," she hissed. "If you had just left things alone, none of this would be happening." Suddenly, a loud voice interrupted us. I turned to see Walter, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "I can't believe what I'm hearing," he said, shaking his head slowly. "My own daughter, lying and using everyone for her own selfish needs." Emma tried to say something, but no words came out. For once, she was speechless, shocked by her father's disappointment. "I don't know you anymore," Walter continued, his voice full of sadness. "The sweet, loving girl I raised, she's gone, isn't she?" The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the weight of his words. Emma and Julie, her mother, locked eyes, silently challenging each other. Finally, Julie spoke harshly. "Well," she demanded, staring hard at her daughter, "aren't you going to defend yourself?" But Emma just stood there, defeated, looking smaller and more defeated than ever. With a disgusted snort, Julie stormed out, followed by Jason's family, their faces showing everything from pity to disgust. And just like that, it was over. The grand event Emma had carefully planned lay in ruins, her dreams shattered. As Jason left the church, his face filled with pain, I felt a bit sorry for him. He was just another pawn in Emma's game, used and discarded at her whim. But that feeling was quickly replaced by a grim satisfaction. The truth was out, and there would be no more lies, no more games. Emma would now taste the bitter results of her actions. In the days following the ruined wedding, chaos ensued as news of Emma's lies spread. She became an outcast in the community she had once hoped to rule. I'll never forget Emma's face when she showed up at her mother Julie's doorstep, desperately looking for help. "Please, Mom," she begged, her voice full of tears she was trying to hold back. "You have to help me. I have nowhere else to go." But Julie just looked at her with disgust and a bit of pity, her lips twisting into a sneer. "Help you?" she scoffed, her laugh bitter. "After the mess you made in public, embarrassing yourself and our family." Emma stepped back, shocked. "But you're my mother. You're supposed to support me no matter what." "There are no sides anymore," Julie replied slowly, shaking her head. You've destroyed all your relationships, pushed away everyone who cared about you with your endless greed and lies." Her harsh words cut deep, each one like a sharp blade. I could see the moment Emma realized the truth, felt the full weight of her loneliness. "You can't mean that," she whispered, reaching out a shaky hand. "Mom, please." But Julie stepped back, her face cold and unfeeling. "I don't know who you are anymore," she said flatly. "The daughter I raised would never sink so low. You've made your bed, Emma. Now you can lie in it alone." With those final harsh words, she turned and went back inside, leaving Emma alone on the doorstep, broken. In the weeks that followed, I watched as Emma, once proud and entitled, was worn down by the consequences of her actions. The trendy bars and fancy stores she used to visit now looked at her with barely hidden contempt, whispers and stares following her. Even her so-called friends deserted her, not wanting to be linked with such a public disgrace. Through it all, Walter and I stood firm, our relationship strengthened in the ordeal of her betrayal. "I'm sorry it came to this," Walter said one evening as we watched Emma pass by, her head down in shame. "But you were right all along." I didn't say anything, just squeezed his hand. Words felt too small in the face of such a harsh reality. As things settled and our community began to recover from the shock of Emma's lies, Walter and I received a lot of support and thanks. We had helped many families and students, and now they showed their gratitude. Everyone we had helped rallied around us, thanking us for standing up to the manipulation and deceit that had almost broken us apart. In those moments of connection, seeing the true depth of human kindness and resilience, I found peace and purpose that I had missed during the worst days of Emma's destructive actions. She had tried to break me down, to make me just a small part of her own big story, but in the end, her own selfishness was her downfall. It stripped away her masks and lies, showing her true empty self. As for me and Walter, we came out of this stronger and wiser. If our experience can inspire others to stand strong against manipulation and deceit, and to value honesty and integrity above all, then maybe some good can still come from the ruins of Emma's shattered dreams. Following my father's funeral, a period when discussions about inheritance were common, my brother-in-law, who is married to my sister Sharon, surprisingly claimed that all of my father's assets, including $7 million in cash and stocks, should solely belong to Sharon, the eldest child. This proposal brought joy to my sister and her husband, yet the lawyer quickly clarified that such a decision wasn't theirs to make. My name is Paul Walker, a 44-year-old sales professional with a wife and 3 kids. My father was a significant shareholder in a company and remained actively involved until his later years. Sharon, my elder sister, has often challenged our parents with her erratic behavior and, even in her middle age, lacks a stable job, choosing to live life on her own terms. Our relationship has been distant, primarily due to my disapproval of her actions. When Sharon turned 52, she unexpectedly introduced us to Russell Brand, a younger, handsome man with a laid-back attitude, and announced their engagement. Despite her financial instability, Sharon didn't hesitate to ask for a substantial sum from our father to cover wedding expenses, quickly depleting it and then audaciously requesting more. This behavior greatly distressed our father, given her presumptuous attitude towards inheritance. The news of our father's sudden heart attack and subsequent passing deeply affected me. Amidst receiving condolences from friends and relatives, I stepped up to assist my overwhelmed mother with the funeral preparations, while Sharon remained absent, engrossed in her own life. The day following the funeral, as my mother and I were beginning to find solace, a lawyer arrived to discuss my father's will. Unaware of its contents, Sharon and her husband audaciously interrupted, asserting that Sharon was entitled to all of my father's stocks and the $7 million inheritance. leaving my mother and me speechless at their boldness. In a moment filled with anticipation, my brother-in-law jubilantly proclaimed, "We've made it, Sharon. This inheritance sets us for life," his fist cutting through the air in triumph. The lawyer, taken aback by such presumption, intervened with a caution, capturing my sister's fierce gaze. He looked at them both squarely and revealed, "Sharon, you have no claim to the inheritance." My sister and her husband, visibly shocked, countered with disbelief, arguing that as the eldest daughter, Sharon was naturally entitled to everything. It was evident my brother-in-law had placed all his bets on this inheritance, convinced it would all go to my sister. Their confusion only deepened when the lawyer, with a gentler tone, dropped a bombshell. "Were you unaware that Sharon is not Mr. Paul's biological child?" Instantly, the color drained from my sister's face as she turned to our mother, her eyes wide with panic. Our mother, her expression a mix of emotions, faced a moment of truth I had long been aware of. My sister was a half-sibling, a fact that had been hidden from her. Confronting our mother, Sharon's voice trembled. "What does this mean?" To which our mother confessed, "Sharon, you come from my first marriage." The revelation stunned Sharon, who had always playfully claimed the title of the favored child. Her husband, trying to grasp at straws, argued that Sharon, being legally adopted, must still be entitled to a share of the inheritance. "That's what I assumed," Sharon supported, yet our mother's next words shattered that belief. There had been no formal adoption. In disbelief, Sharon protested, "But I'm the eldest daughter." Dad even acknowledged it. Her frustration now turned towards me accusingly. "You're going to let him take everything?" she challenged. Annoyed by her sense of entitlement, I couldn't help but respond, pointing out her continual reliance on our father's generosity despite it. As they insisted on the fairness of a father's support for his daughter, I was reminded of how my sister used his financial aid not for growth, but to bail herself out of recurring predicaments. It was then that Mrs. Paul, our mother, who had been silent, suggested, "Perhaps it's time Sharon reviewed the will as well." Caught off guard, Sharon panicked, "The will? I don't know anything about that." It was her lack of attention and engagement that had led to this moment. Our father had intended for us to discuss the will together when he drafted it, but Sharon, uninterested at the time, chose leisure over family matters. Highlighting the omission from the will, I saw my brother-in-law's frustration flare as he sharply questioned Sharon. "What were you thinking?" This mattered. The realization dawned that they had to confront the contents of my father's will. The lawyer clarified that the inheritance was designated for me and my mother, citing my father's hesitance to adopt Sharon due to her indifferent attitude towards me, her spending habits, and her overall conduct. Sharon was visibly shaken by the news that she had no legal claim to any inheritance. At this revelation, my brother-in-law's temper escalated, accusingly pointing out to Sharon, "You promised there was wealth." His attitude became threatening, shocking my mother and Sharon, though I wasn't surprised given his history of greed and opportunistic behavior. He coldly told Sharon not to return until she had secured some money, revealing his true motives and leaving everyone in dismay as he abruptly left the scene. Feeling betrayed and cornered, Sharon turned her frustration towards us, particularly our mother, lamenting, "Why wasn't I legally adopted? It's unfair that the inheritance bypasses me." Her outburst was raw and filled with a sense of betrayal, causing a stir that the lawyer witnessed with a seasoned calm. When Sharon accused me of being the undeserved beneficiary simply because I was our father's biological son, her words cut deep. But I realized that my existence was not the root of her exclusion. It was her actions and choices. Before the situation could escalate further, the lawyer intervened, warning that her behavior could lead to legal consequences, a reminder that made Sharon pause, likely recalling her previous misdemeanors. As time passed, the inheritance process concluded smoothly, thanks in part to the lawyer's expertise, leaving no room for further dispute from Sharon or her husband. Despite their initial discontent, my mother decided to give Sharon some financial assistance, a gesture I chose not to comment on. Their subsequent disappearance with the funds only underscored their true intentions, leaving a bitter impression among our relatives who were privy to the saga. Seeking to uplift our spirits, I organized a family meal with my mother, wife, and daughter. The outing, suggested by my wife, brought a noticeable change in my mother's demeanor, brightened by the presence of her granddaughter, offering a moment of joy amidst the ongoing family turmoil. During a moment of calm, I suggested to my mom, "How about moving in with us?" But I was quick to add, knowing the unpredictability tied to my sister, Sharon, she might drop by, seeking help, especially financial. We should be cautious not to enable her too much. My mom's hesitation was palpable. Sharon, despite everything, was her daughter, and the prospect of potentially inviting conflict held her back. I left the offer open for her to ponder as we approached our ancestral home, only to be greeted by an unexpected sight. Lights on in what should have been an empty house. Suspecting Sharon might have returned, I proposed, "Let's have a quick coffee inside," as we got out of the car. Suddenly, a car charged towards us, missing us by a whisker, but in protecting my wife and responding to my daughter's alarmed cry, I ended up in a flower bed, slightly injured by the fleeting touch of the car, which eventually crashed into the garage entrance. My wife and daughter rushed to my aid, while my mother, frozen with shock, watched from the doorway. The incident led to my hospitalization overnight, and I later found out that Russell Brand, my brother-in-law, was behind the wheel, claiming a mix-up between the accelerator and the brake, a story I found hard to swallow. When my mother and sister visited me in the hospital, Sharon's response to my condition was chilling, hinting at her disappointment in my resilience, almost as if she had hoped for a more beneficial outcome for herself. I couldn't resist commenting on her apparent wish for my demise to claim the inheritance, noting her unease as she diverted her gaze. I then revealed that our mother intended to relinquish her inheritance in my favor, making any drastic actions from their side futile. My sister's shock was evident. The concept of foregoing a rightful inheritance seemed alien to her. I further explained that, in preparation and following our father's prudent approach, I had already drafted a will, ensuring my family's future, thus redirecting the inheritance away from our mother directly to them. My sister's plea for a share from the speculated $7 million, under the guise of familial generosity, only highlighted her desperation and misunderstanding of our family's values and intentions. In the aftermath of firmly rejecting my sister Sharon's demand for a substantial share of the inheritance, the atmosphere in the hospital room shifted dramatically. Sharon's demeanor transformed, her face contorting into a visage of pure fury as she physically accosted me, her hands gripping my collar in desperation. "Give me half, I'm your sister," she demanded, her voice laced with a chilling blend of anger and desperation. It was a distressing sight, witnessing her descent into what appeared to be a state of irrationality, driven to the brink by her intense desire for the inheritance. Her actions, so starkly at odds with the values our father held dear, made me regard her with a deep sense of pity and disappointment. "Do you not realize how your greed would have disappointed Dad?" I questioned, hoping to ignite some sense of reason within her. Yet this only served to inflame her anger further, as she made a grab for my throat in a shocking escalation of violence. The situation took a dramatic turn when our mother's voice, tinged with alarm and authority, cut through the tension. Nurses quickly intervened, escorting a visibly shaken Sharon away from me. Despite the turmoil, it was evident that my mother's heart ached for Sharon, her biological daughter, even though Sharon had directed her vitriol towards her as well. Where did I go wrong in raising her? My mother lamented, a question heavy with sorrow and regret that echoed in the sterile hospital corridor. The emotional and physical toll of the incident was soon overshadowed by my mother's deteriorating health. As her condition worsened, my wife and I found ourselves more involved in her day-to-day care, a development that seemed to provoke Sharon's resentment. Her feelings of exclusion were palpable, especially as she confronted the reality of our increased presence in our mother's life. This tension reached a boiling point when Sharon, in an abrupt phone call, insisted that she and Russell would take over caring for our mother, effectively sidelining my wife and me. Her declaration was unexpected and filled with a certainty that brooked no argument. Despite my attempts to reason with her, to discuss what was best for our mother, Sharon remained unmoved, ending the call with a finality that left us stunned. Confirming this sudden shift with my wife, who had received a similar message, we were both left concerned for our mother's well-being, especially considering Sharon and Russell's lack of experience in caregiving and household management. Surprisingly, Russell claimed to have some caregiving experience, a small comfort given our mother's still manageable level of independence. Yet this reassurance was short-lived. Within a month, a grave medication error sent our mother to the hospital, her condition alarmingly frail. It was a mistake that was unlike her, known for her meticulousness, especially with her medication. As my wife remained by my mother's bedside, offering the support and love she needed, I ventured back to the family home. What greeted me was a scene of neglect, a bare refrigerator, a poignant reminder of my mother's once vibrant love for cooking, and the absence of the household help that had been a staple in our family's life. The disarray spoke volumes of the care or lack thereof that Sharon and Russell had promised, casting a long shadow over their capability to manage the responsibilities they had so confidently claimed they could handle. Discovering that a considerable sum of money had been withdrawn from my mother's bank account filled me with regret for ever placing trust in my sister. Despite the safety measures, with her bank card and PIN securely locked away, the funds meant for everyday expenses had nearly vanished, while thankfully, the inheritance remained safe in a separate deposit box. This breach of trust prompted me to collect necessary items for my mother's hospital stay, including her bank card, to address the financial anomaly. Upon discussing the situation with my mother, it became apparent she was oblivious to the mishandling of her bank card. Yet, when the conversation shifted to the medication mishap, a shadow of sorrow crossed her face as she admitted it was Russell, my brother-in-law, who had prepared it. The suggestion that Sharon should no longer be welcomed into the house seemed more urgent than ever. My mother's condition and the chaotic state of our home were alarming. "Mom, you need to stay with us," I insisted, envisioning a peaceful home for her recovery. Despite this, her health worsened, possibly exacerbated by stress, leading to her untimely demise. The somber task of arranging her funeral revealed a grim reality. The family home was stripped of its valuables, a testament to my sister and Russell's relentless greed. The emptiness of the house mirrored my feelings of shock and betrayal, fueling a resolve to seek justice for their egregious actions. The aftermath of my mother's funeral set the stage for a meeting with the lawyer, where my sister audaciously claimed her entitlement to our mother's inheritance. Her confidence wavered as the will was read, revealing her exclusion from any inheritance, a directive from our father reflecting his final wishes. Russell's outrage at this revelation only compounded the tension, his frustration manifesting in a destructive outburst. Amidst his tirade, I confronted him with a pressing question, one that hinted at a dark suspicion. "Russell, did you attempt to harm my mom?" The gravity of the situation hung in the air, marking a pivotal moment in our family's saga. As we awaited his response, the truth of their actions poised to come to light under the scrutiny of the law. As I squarely faced him, Russell returned my inquiry with a look of irritation. "I've done nothing wrong," he defensively claimed when questioned about the medication error. His annoyance was palpable, emphasizing their fixation on the inheritance rather than the well-being of our mother. Sharon, losing any semblance of calm, chimed in, outraged at the prospect of being left out of the inheritance. Her reaction betrayed her motives. It wasn't concern for our mother that drove her, but rather the hope of solving her financial woes with the inheritance. "Is it true that I'm getting nothing?" She demanded an explanation from the lawyer, her voice a mix of disbelief and desperation. The lawyer began to outline the specifics of the inheritance distribution, taking into account the funds Sharon had prematurely withdrawn and the value of the items she had sold. The end result left little to nothing for her, a revelation that left her visibly frustrated. I couldn't help but interject, highlighting that this outcome was the result of careful legal consultation. "That can't be all that's left," Sharon muttered, a clear indication of her disillusionment with the reality of her financial dependency on our parents, never having to face the struggles of earning a living. My disappointment in her turned to anger. "Mom thought you'd look after her, but instead, you just took her money and left her alone," I accused, unable to hide my disdain for her actions. Sharon retorted, demanding evidence of the expenses incurred for our mother's care. I challenged her to justify the spending, extending my hand for the receipts, knowing full well she had none. I don't have them," she stammered, her confidence waning. The lawyer underscored the importance of such documentation, leaving Sharon at a loss for words. Russell then tried to appeal to my sense of family, urging me to support Sharon despite everything. But my resolve was unshaken. Their desperation was evident, and Russell's admission that Sharon would have inherited everything if their plan had succeeded only added to my suspicion of their true intentions. "What do you mean by that?" I pressed, seeking clarity on his revealing comment, ready to uncover the extent of their schemes. As the tension in the room escalated, Russell inadvertently made a comment that shifted the atmosphere drastically, revealing their true intentions. "Because of this guy, things never go right. I was expecting a new car out of this deal, but now I'm stuck with just enough for some repairs," he lamented, not realizing the weight of his words. My sister, Sharon, attempted to intervene, perhaps to salvage the situation, but the damage was done. The lawyer, seizing the moment, underscored the gravity of Russell's admission. "That's a serious allegation, akin to fraud," she observed, barely concealing a smile as she eyed the couple. Her next revelation caught them off guard. "This meeting has been recorded, with your consent," she reminded, effectively trapping Russell in his own narrative. Realizing the depth of his blunder, Russell's confidence deflated. Seizing the moment, I informed him of my intentions to press charges for the accident. Russell's attempt to dismiss the threat as baseless was quickly undermined by his own words, now recorded evidence. The situation spiraled for them as Sharon, overwhelmed by the turn of events, berated Russell for his carelessness, despairing over their predicament. In the aftermath, Russell faced criminal charges, his prior misdeeds compounding the legal action against him, leading to his arrest. Sharon, implicated for her role, received a milder sentence due to her lesser involvement. Facing financial ruin, she reached out to relatives for support, only to be met with rejection, a consequence of her actions and their fallout. As for me, witnessing the unraveling of my sister and brother-in-law's schemes brought a complex mix of vindication and sorrow. The path they chose not only led to their downfall, but also strained familial bonds, leaving a lasting impact on all involved. I kept on working hard, choosing not to depend on any inheritance. Instead, I found comfort and a bit of joy in the dividends that came from my investments in stocks, considering it a small but satisfying reward for my efforts.